Welcome to the Resilient Recruiter Podcast. This is your host, Mark Whitby, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Kimberly Laipple. Kim is the SVP and Managing Director of Scientific Search. In addition to her operational function, she still runs a full desk, along with managing a team of 28 recruiters. During the 14 years that Kim has been with Scientific Search, she has successfully placed people in clinical and commercial, operations, manufacturing, engineering, R&D, analytics, and many other areas within pharmaceutical, life science, med device, healthcare, technology, and consumer packaged goods. 2022 was a record year for Kim, billing over $1.4 million personally, in addition to onboarding and developing junior recruiters. Kim's also joined the Pinnacle Society, which is a consortium of the top 80 recruiters in the US. And Kim's consultative approach and her client development skills have allowed her to continue to grow with the organization and increase her client base year after year. Kim holds an MBA and a Bachelor of Science in Business Management. She has 2 daughters, 4 grandchildren, and a house full of furry kids as well. Kim, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
So you were referred to me by Kathy Stewart, who has also been on the show. How do you know Kathy?
From Pinnacle. She is amazing. And it was an honor that she thought of me to be referred into the podcast for sure.
Great. Yeah, she has a big personality as well.
She's great.
So she was a lot of fun. How did you so you've been in recruiting for 25 years in total, I think?
Yeah, just a little over that now. Yeah.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
How did you first get into recruitment?
Believe it or not, a newspaper ad out of college. Had no idea what I was applying for. Said new grads with a business degree, send your resume in. And I got a call back and was looking for an opportunity to start my career and started it in home care staffing. And then
Fantastic.
grew from there.
It's hilarious. Do you remember what the ad said?
It literally, I think all it said was new grads with business degree send resume, because obviously you paid by the word, right? So there was very little in the ad. I had no idea even until I went for the interview, because there was no internet really at that point to look up companies or do any research. So I went in blind and thought, I can do this. So
That's hilarious.
yeah.
Do you know, I responded to a newspaper ad to get my first recruitment job as well. And the thing that stood out to me, but it was a display ad, so it was a little bigger.
Okay.
And it had, I don't remember the content of the ad, but what grabbed my attention was the on-target earnings of £43,000, which to me at the time, I was in my early 20s. It was late 90s. And that seemed like a mind-boggling amount of money to me. I was like, wow, imagine if I could earn £43,000. And then I went along for the interview, and the guy, I'm still friends with on Facebook, Brian Jemmett, was like, well, yeah, that's realistic in the end of year 2, right?
That
so that
sounds
wasn't even
more right. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I was like, oh, okay. But anyway, so there we go. So this show, Kim, is called The Resilient Recruiter. And I know your journey to the top of our profession has, you faced your share of challenges. And I know you shared with me that you were a single mom at 18 and had to, find a way to make a life for yourself and your kids. Could you talk a little about that and how that has had an impact on your career choices?
Yeah, for sure. When you're in that situation, you really don't know what you're going to do. But I knew one thing was that I needed to find a way to make a living where my income didn't depend on someone else's choices. And I have never actually worked a position where I didn't get commission or tips, we'll say, because I waited tables for years. But I knew that the harder I worked, the more money I made in those environments. And that was the only environment that was going to allow me to really be able to provide for my children. So it was a long road. And once I got into it, I realized how difficult it was going to be and how many hours it was going to take. But I knew that I was doing something that was both providing for my family as well as impacting others' lives. And at the end of the day, there's only so many hours. So if I can combine all that in one, that was the way for me to go. So I started in home care staffing it was rough, a lot of call hours, a lot of long nights, replacing nurses at the last minute when they call out. And I didn't even know this type of recruitment existed. Um, I was looking for a new opportunity. I was kind of capped where I was and found this type of recruitment in a very male dominated industry back then. And again, was faced with a new set of challenges, which was how was I going to make a mark as a female and continue to develop without having to move jobs. And that's where my career track started here with kind of forging my own way and creating roles for myself within the organization that continue to fulfill me while still letting me earn an amazing income. And I don't regret it for a single day. It's been an amazing journey.
That's so cool for on so many levels.
Thank you.
One being like just the motivation and your purpose that drove you to kind of find recruiting as a profession. I think everyone can relate to. We talk a lot in our coaching group about knowing your why, and
Yes.
like Simon Sinek's book Start With Why, and how purpose, if you can tap into that, it's such a huge it helps to you to be find your drive and motivation, and be able to overcome obstacles. But also, it's a very attractive quality if you know what you want and why it's important to you, and how this fulfills some kind of a greater meaning apart from just getting jobs, filling jobs, etc. Then it's that almost is like it's almost um non-verbally, people can detect that you really believe in what you do, and both clients and candidates and potential team members who might want to join your team as well. Um, can you speak a little more about, you mentioned forging your own career path. How did
Sure.
that develop?
So when I joined the organization almost 15 years ago, there were, I think, 6 or 8 of us, two women, the rest were gentlemen. And we all kind of just worked. There was no hierarchy per se. There was no, the way you grew or developed within the company was in your billing. And we continued to develop and grow a little bit. I started mentoring junior recruiters as they came in, and I got to a point in billing where I said, without more people or without process or without something scalable, this is all I can do in the amount of hours that are in the day. I can't get to $1 million in what we do because I'm doing everything from start to finish at the desk. So we started looking at I started looking at opportunities for us to develop and grow the business in a structured environment with processes in place, increasing technology, adding automation, adding researchers, things along those lines. But in turn, with me doing that, I naturally rose into more of a leadership role within the organization. Um, it was never, I never looked at leadership as something that you got and then did, but it was always something that you did and everything else kind of follows. You do the job and then you get the job, kind of old school philosophy, I guess. And the more I led and the more I structured our organization, the more I spent time creating processes and trainings, the more I grew within the organization and took on more of a leadership role naturally.
Amazing. I love that. And it is so logical. Could you say a little more about what were the changes that you introduced, whether it's
Sure.
from the point of view of the organization structure or the technology that you
Yeah.
embraced and that kind of thing? Like, what were the pivotal improvements that you've made along the way that you think have had the biggest impact?
One is that we realize that every person is different that joins the organization. So before you came in, you worked a desk and that was what happened. Now we have people, I really spent time structuring the organization to play into people's strengths. So if someone wants to do business development and is good at business development, then we work with them on business development. If they want to run a full desk, then they can run a full desk. If they only want to recruit forever, and never ever talk to clients, never do business development, that's okay if they're really good at recruitment. We don't need to shove a round peg into a square hole to fulfill some type of track. So we started building out different career paths for people. You can achieve a manager level based on billing, or you can achieve a manager level based on direct reports. um, Instituting researchers to take administrative work off of our plates, where it just doesn't make sense if I'm billing $1 million to be looking up email addresses for 2 hours a day. Where if you support me in that and bring in support staff to help us, that's going to increase the overall billing. Also, segmenting so that the owner wasn't bombarded with everyone directly reporting to him, so creating a structure where it allowed people less time dealing with the minutia of the day to day and more time in what was revenue producing or business related activity. And then the last thing we really worked on was client development. We had a lot of clients that would, come to us for a shift or a position here or there. And then one of the things we worked on was that consultative approach, and no longer being niched by discipline, but being niched by industry, working with different recruiters in the company to develop them in specific niches within that industry. So a company can come to me and I have 28 recruiters, all with different backgrounds, all with different areas of specialization, but they have just me to contact. And then I make sure the right people handle their searches in the background. I make sure that they're taken care of the way that we believe that they should be within our organization. And we work very closely with the clients on extending their voice into the market. A lot of very close collaboration, becoming embedded in organizations to the best of our ability, and making sure that our clients know that they can depend on us, that we're not here just for the fee.
Love it. Okay, that's all makes good sense. Following up on a few things you said, first of
Sure.
all, regarding the different career paths that you have available.
Hmm.
So, someone could do 360 if they're good at that,
Hmm.
or they may just choose to focus on business development or, the client, the candidate side, sorry, on the recruiting. Um, and I can, so I like that. Is there's a flexibility so that
Yeah.
it's not rigid. If someone wants to do a full desk, they can, but there's other options. And I had Pri Sarkar on the show recently, who's
Hmm.
another Pinnacle
Yeah.
member, and he's got this 120 model where he's got research and data, he's got client development, and he's got candidates, um, and that's working really really well for him. This is the thing with the recruiting industry. There's not one right way of doing this, right?
Right.
There's you have to create a model that works for your business. But I guess my question about if you have people who are purely candidate focused,
Mhm.
and then like your industry or the overall economy gets into difficulty,
Mhm.
then how do you leverage those people's time effectively so that they're still productive if, for example, the job flow significantly decreases?
It's a great question, and very timely, right? With not sure where we're going to go. One of the things that we do with the recruiters is let them know that if that comes down to it, they may need to get on the phone and generate
Right.
business. And the way that we work with them on that to make sure that that's something that can happen is they are in every client call, every client meeting with me for their searches. They're on every email correspondence, so the clients know them, they've interacted with the clients, so they understand the way to interact with clients. And in addition to that, we do morning trainings twice a week, and one of them is specific on sales, yet everyone has to attend. So it gives
Smart.
them little samples. They hear ways that we overcome objections for contracts or how to deal with a tough search, or we're very close knit, so they know how to work a client, how to work a search, and what they're looking for. So it wouldn't be out of character for them to be able to jump on the phone. And those that are willing to do that they'll weather the storm if there is one coming up. We're very fortunate in the life sciences that, knock on wood, medicine needs to happen no matter what the economy is like. So thankfully, we have been through, I personally, my younger staff obviously has never been through one, but I've been through several and we've come out just fine. The owner always says, those are the times where we pull a paycheck, but we don't have a wheelbarrow full of money. So, you still make a decent living. It's not like we won't have enough. It's just we work a little bit smarter and kind of monitor how they're feeding us leads. Are they asking people other places they've interviewed? Are they getting that information that I need to make sure that I can keep their desk full?
Great answer. It totally makes sense. And I love the fact that they have access to the client interactions, so
Yes,
they're comfortable and confident dealing with clients, even though it's not their primary
right.
responsibility, and also that they get to attend all the trainings. My friend Joel Slenning, who's contributed to my coaching community significantly, um, who scaled and sold a couple of businesses now, and he's doing it again. Um, he has like the split desk model. So he's got,
Right.
the client side and the candidate side, but everybody who joins his business goes through the full desk training.
Mhm.
So everybody when they first join and they go through his kind of academy, um, they have to learn the full desk, even if they're ultimately going to be focused on candidates, because he thinks it's really important that they have just a complete
Yes.
understanding of the whole business, and they understand their part in it and how it contributes to the overall placement process. And it does give more career flexibility as well if they want to cross over
Yep.
or switch at any stage in the future.
I think that's so important. I think there's a mindset in communicating with a client that's very different than when you communicate with a candidate. And one of the things we work on is that, like, you worded it this way because that's what the candidate said, but here's how you position that to a client so that they understand from, you have to think from both perspectives. So we work a lot on
Yeah.
that so that the transition isn't as rough if they choose to do that.
Makes sense. Absolutely. So you've got the organization structure, you've alluded to the training. What other um, innovations or changes have you introduced, Kim, that have enabled you? Because like billing close to $1.5 million in a year is phenomenal. There are
Thank you.
very few recruiters who ever manage to achieve that. What do you think are the critical success factors?
Mhm. Um, I think I think there's a couple things that happen in this industry, and depending on how you look at your client base, how you structure your book of business has a big impact on that. One of the things I've always been very cognizant of after my first year or two was that, early on, I had all my eggs in one basket. I had a client that was feeding me business constantly. I was billing, a couple $100,000 there a year, and they went away. And I've made sure that I've never allowed that to happen again. I think one of the other things is too, I like diversity in my jobs, meaning that I like jobs that are 60K and jobs that are 150K and in between, because it allows my recruiters to make placements consistently. And that dopamine hit, there's nothing a placement can't fix, keeps them motivated and hungry. And it doesn't allow them to go for gaps of time where they don't have, because we're mainly all direct hire. And, if you're doing very high level searches and that's all you're doing and you miss one of them, could be a really
Yeah.
rough quarter. So, by keeping them on a variety of jobs at different levels keeps them engaged and active in their searches, allows them to
Mhm.
speak to different people, and allows me obviously to make more placements. I think delegating was huge. It was a difficult learning curve for me as I grew. I don't think I'm abnormal that most of us are A-type personalities and we're control freaks in what we do, and that's probably why we're good at this. But I needed to learn to hand off things that were not allowing me to reach my goals of over 1,000,000, and making sure that I empowered people. And, I was just joking with somebody the other day about the whole teach them to fish kind of philosophy. I can give you the answer, but if you test the answer back to me and we work through it, then next time you're not going to need my help and you're going to grow and get more confident and be able to do more, which in turn allows me to bill more. I do enjoy managing people, and I think that's helpful. I have a large group of direct reports, which to a lot of people is like, I would never want to do that. But that also contributes to my billing because that 1.4, 1.5 was just sales side. So in actuality, it's 3 million. And so by having more direct ports, having more people that can um, work jobs and develop them and empower them, with me being the client facing person and empowering the recruiters to do what they do best, I'm able to bill more.
Fantastic. So the first thing you mentioned was building your book of business so you're not over reliant on a small number of accounts. And
Yeah.
this is such a fatal mistake that I see
Mhm.
recruiters make over and over, even like really smart people. And I'm like,
Yes.
no, in
Yes.
our client group, like in 2021 and 2022, when the market was just insane and there was so much demand,
Mhm.
people were like just constantly in delivery mode.
Right.
And me and my colleague Leanne are constantly telling our clients, listen, you always need to be developing business, even, when you've got a lot of jobs. And people say, yeah, I know. But then they,
They don't.
they don't do it. And then, uh, the market slows or the demand, like right now, it's a strange, we'll talk about the market in a minute,
Very
but a,
strange.
lo-
Yeah.
a lot of people are seeing the shift where they now need to do more
Mhm.
business development.
Yeah.
Whereas, but then it's hard if you just
Yeah.
keep going. It's a bit like going to the gym. I think like if you are going regularly, it's just a normal. It's like a habit, and it's just
Sure.
part of your weekly routine.
Sure.
But then if you don't go for a couple of years and you have to, oh, but boy, I better get back in shape, then it feels like really hard
Such an
work at that
undertaking.
point.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that was interesting. You also mentioned how you like to have things in terms of like your average fee size. There's quite a lot of variety there,
Yes.
from mid level to senior level searches. Um, I forgot to ask, what is your model as far as, do you work on a retained basis
Mhm.
or is it contingent? Like, what's the setup?
We are probably right now about 80% direct hire, 20% contract. And
Okay.
that's based on the market. There are times where we're 50-50, sixty
Mhm.
forty, and out of that, we're probably 90% contingent.
Hmm,
Um,
interesting.
I would say out of that 90, though, probably 50%, maybe a little bit higher, is contingent exclusive.
Yes.
And that's just through client development. They just don't call anybody else if you take care of them well. We
Hmm.
do have some retained and some engaged searches.
Hmm.
We do have people here that prefer those type, that go after those types of searches.
Hmm.
Um, I feel the contingent keeps me sharp.
Hmm.
I know that's not always a popular opinion as we get later in our career. I know a lot of Pinnacle does nothing but retained.
Hmm.
Um, I like the competition. I like proving that we are different than the average recruiting firm. I like going up against another firm and my staff knowing that they won that one or why they lost it. I think it builds character. So I don't mind the contingent end, but I do work very hard to make sure that eventually we're the only company that they're working with.
I think well, to me, that is a prerequisite. If I'm going to work with a client, it would have to be minimum exclusive. I'll tell you why, Kim. Like I discovered pretty early on, I'm too slow. and I'm
Mm,
quite methodical in the way I do things. And
okay.
also I I I insist on doing things a certain way. And for example, talking to a candidate before submitting them,
Oh,
it
yeah.
seems like obvious to me, but there are companies who will, especially in a race, if it's a contingent multi-agency scenario, they'll just skip that part, and
Sure.
then you present the candidate having thoroughly interviewed the sorry, you've thoroughly interviewed the candidate. You then present the client as to why they're a good fit, and the client's like, oh, we already have this resume,
Right.
and you're like, oh, but the candidate hasn't been spoken to by
Spoken.
anyone else. So
Mhm.
that to me was intolerable. I just couldn't accept
Mhm.
that. And then the second thing, the reason then eventually I went retained was you could do everything right, Kim,
Uh-huh.
and the client can then go, oh, actually, never mind. We don't need that after all, right?
Mhm.
And you're like, what? We've just spent 3 weeks working on that,
Yeah.
and I had so umpteen conversations,
Right.
and they, so to me, it's not an equal relationship
Sure.
where you're mutually committed to seeing to getting the outcome. But I recognize that's not
Yeah.
the only business model. It was the right one for me, and it's one
Sure.
I'm keen on. Um, when you mentioned delegating,
Mhm.
what are some of the types of things that you learned to delegate in order to be more productive yourself?
I think, I take the customer service aspect of client development to a level that I don't think a lot of people do. Like, we schedule all their interviews for them. We do a lot of things to provide an added service, which allows the company to then look at us as part of the organization. And it really does allow us a different view into the company. So for example, there's no way I could schedule every team's interview for every one of my recruiters and send out the invites to all the correct parties and organize all of that. So there we have somebody that does that. She is my lifeline. And also I managed all our tech platforms. I'm still interfacing with the salespeople and still choosing the tech that we use, but I cannot train everyone on every tech platform or answer every question every day. I have a staff from the age of 23 maybe to 70.
Mhm.
So
Wow,
very
that's cool.
different learning, changes to technology and adaptation challenges and things along those lines. So I am, I'm very cognizant of the time that that takes, and I want people to feel comfortable asking those questions and getting the support they need. I just don't have the bandwidth for it.
Yeah.
So I need to be on the phone with clients. I need to be making sure that we have enough business. I need to be making sure operationally I'm keeping an eye on KPIs and things like that. So I have somebody that, same person that schedules the interviews. She is responsible for our tech platforms, troubleshooting things for people. Um, we run automation now, just drip campaigns and things like that, that the researchers manage so the recruiters don't get bogged down with that. So, basically anything that's not money making activity from, obviously interviews are, but the scheduling part of it, or looking at operational efficiency or strategy for the company, I try to hand off.
Love it. So that's a good criteria. So if it's not directly revenue generating, and if it's not of strategic importance in terms of creating operational efficiency, then you try and delegate as many other things as possible.
Yes. Yes.
I like the fact that you have resource who can um, manage your tech platforms. I'd love to talk about that in a second because that's
Hmm.
one of my favorite
Me too.
topics that I geek out over.
Yeah.
And so actually, it would probably help to understand within your business what are the we've talked about already. You have three different career paths for people who are going to be front office staff. So, your recruiters, your business developers and your 360 consultants. But then in terms of the support team,
Mhm.
what does that look like?
Yeah, that's interesting. We realized after we started bringing on researchers, like, well, what do we do when they want a promotion or, they want more responsibility? Again, that's a tailored approach. Mackenzie, that I'm referencing, that handles a lot of those things for me, she joined thinking that she wanted to be a recruiter.
Mhm.
We started the training for that, and she hated it. Absolutely couldn't stand the thought of picking that phone up one more time. But she's amazing, she's very efficient, and she loves operational type tasks. So I met with the owners and we looked at the opportunity to offload a lot of what was preventing me from building the business further. And they were incredibly supportive, and we made Mackenzie sort of an operational lead, so that she can handle all of those things. And then the other researchers report to her. So that gave her the leadership role that she was looking for. She's a very diverse day. It keeps her very engaged and always challenges her. I have two researchers that are young, under a year in the business, right out of college, and honestly, they don't know what they want to do. They don't know if they want to recruit. They don't know if they want to keep developing and research work, and that's okay. And they know that we meet with them quarterly, and if there's a point in time where they're not feeling challenged or fulfilled, or they want to try to get involved in something else, let me know. One handles social media. One of my researchers was one of my top recruiters last year, and she didn't love it and took a step back and decided to be a
Interesting.
researcher, and she's phenomenal
Mhm.
at it. She was great at finding candidates. She just didn't like the grind of getting to the candidate.
Mhm.
And the phone work. Some people just don't love talking to people all day. So she's a researcher, but I do lean into her for some higher level tasks, whether
Mhm.
it's looking up contact info and developing out clients for me, or we have them call candidates to schedule them with us because it frees up the recruiters at times to make those appointments for them. So there's a
Great.
lot of different things they can do, but they, again, don't have a set career path. That is up to them what they want to take on and how they want to grow.
Mhm.
And we realize that that could create a point in time where we don't have something that will fulfill them. And at that point, I am more than happy to help them find that. If they're not happy, I want them to be, because we spend too much time working not to love what we do. So
Great. Like that. That's excellent. Um, let's talk about technology. You mentioned
yeah.
you leveraging automation, and what are the tech platforms that you have found to be the most beneficial for your business?
So I'm on the tech committee at Pinnacle, so I also geek out over this. This is
All right.
absolutely my favorite topic. I have, over the years, developed a very efficient tech stack, but I'm always learning and always adding new things, which is so much fun. Obviously, we use LinkedIn Recruiter. Um, we use Zoom Info, a lot of the biggies, but a couple of the things that I think that were game changers for us was, one of them being, we just started using bullhorn automation.
Hmm.
There's other things out there. It used to be called Herefish, um,
Yeah.
and Bullhorn Automation purchased it, and realizing that anything we work with, integrating it with our CRM is critical because of the
Yes.
documentation aspect.
Yeah.
I'm a big beta person. I love to test new things. And
Hmm.
I was on the beta testing committee for Zoom Info's Engage platform and their new Talent
Hmm.
OS. Spent hours with the developers, working on perfecting that. So we do use Engage a lot in Talent OS. One of my very favorite tools that is pretty new that a lot of people have never heard of. So I'll give a shout out to Tim Walker at 3DIQ. And 3DIQ is a platform that does integrate with Bullhorn but can be used standalone,
Hmm.
that packages your candidates very nicely. I
Mm,
can't think of how many times all of us have been upset that we spend time typing a presentation and we send it somewhere and we know that somebody just sends the resume to the hiring manager and doesn't send our information.
right.
Or we don't know who's opening our, they say, "Oh, we never got it," or "We didn't see
Mm,
that," or so 3DIQ integrates with Bullhorn, like I mentioned, or standalone, but it embeds your presentation and the resume into one page.
mhm.
It puts your logo on the page, it embeds your contact info on the page, and you know every time they open the link.
That's
So,
handy.
yes. So, for example, not this week, the week before, over the weekend, I had a client opening. I can't even tell you how many presentations for a search we did a few months ago, and then
Huh.
they put the search on hold. And sure enough, I followed up on Monday after I saw that, and we have 4 interviews scheduled because the search came off hold. No,
That's cool.
without that, I would have never known. Um,
Right.
in addition to that, by clicking a few buttons in that platform, it tracks all of your notes. It puts all of your notes directly into the CRM, and we all know as recruiters we're terrible with documentation.
Mhm.
It also moves them from one stage to another, and that's another part where my recruiters were not always remembering to do that. And then
Mhm.
on the actual platform, when the client receives the resume, there's a section where they can score the candidate and give you resume or interview availability immediately. So they can be home watching TV, going through their emails on their cell phone, and immediately I get their interview feedback, what they like about the candidate, and when they want us to schedule them. And it does turn around the time from presentation to interview, but significantly. I mean, we've had an amazing response to the platform.
That's really cool. I'm
Yeah.
definitely gonna check that out.
Yeah, it's
Interesting.
fun.
And so how could you describe your process, like how all the
Mhm.
technology fits together
Yeah.
in a way that is saving you guys time?
Yeah. That was probably harder than the choosing of the tech.
Yeah, exactly. It's making it
Yeah.
all integrate together. That's
Yes.
yeah.
So we went through and practiced a lot of different processes. And then recently we realized that a lot of people were doing things differently, and not all as effectively. It was actually taking them more time because it wasn't
Mhm,
streamlined. So we started using OneNote in Microsoft
mhm,
and creating almost like a little binder for each job. And in that binder, there's a what to do when you get a search. And it goes through the steps of automation that you should be using and when you should be using them. And then, so if as long as they go through and follow that, and obviously I put little check box because we all like to check things off and feel like we accomplished something, right?
right.
So the other thing was I took the majority of the automation out of the recruiter's hands and moved it to the researchers. So the
Smart.
recruiters just have a form that they fill out, just a Word doc, with a couple spots, and then they email that to the researcher. The researcher then sets up the automation, monitors it, reruns it, does lets the recruiter know when it needs to be updated, because the recruiters are just that's just not what we do. That's more of a transactional function than a business or sales function.
Mhm.
And then the other thing is the researchers are empowered to follow up with the recruiters that they support multiple times throughout the week, asking, "Hey, do you need me to do, where are we with this search?" So
Excellent. Nagging, in other
prompting, yeah,
words.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely, gently
That's good.
nagging.
Yeah.
So, but yes, I do believe that was my one of my biggest challenges with technology was creating a process that allowed everyone to feel comfortable, not overwhelmed, and allowed them to kind of like you said about the gym, right? To allow it to become something that's second nature. Here's my checklist. I keep it on my desk. I when I get a search, I go to it. It doesn't matter if it's my first search or my, thousandth. If
Yeah.
I do these things and then do what I know to do, there's a magic in the combination of those two.
Totally. This is brilliant,
Thank
Kim.
you.
in our coaching program, we have 6 pillars of a 7-figure recruitment business. And one of the 6 pillars is operations. And the goal is to make your business run like a well oiled machine,
Yes.
leveraging systems, process, and technology. And it's the kind of the Achilles heel for most recruiters and recruitment business owners.
Yes.
It's not their forte and they don't like thinking about it necessarily, but it can just make your life so much easier and also support you to increase your billings. Um, so we kind of do a similar thing as the checklist you mentioned.
Hmm.
We don't use OneNote. We use well in my business we use Asana, which is like a project management
Yes, I love
tool.
Asana. We've been looking
And
at it.
so, but it allows you to do those checklists, or you can have a board view as well if you like the Kanban board of moving things from one column to
Sure.
the next. But I think it's really valuable. All of our listeners should, in terms of an action
Hmm.
point from what Kim just said, actually either if you're a solo do it yourself or if you have a team, get everyone together and whiteboard what are all the steps in our placement process
Yes.
and just get clear on, because people shouldn't really be doing it differently. Of
Right.
course, everyone has a different personality and they way of communicating, but the actual steps they follow should be the same across the business, right? So
Absolutely.
you create your, this is the, let's say, scientific search way of filling a
Hmm.
job, and it's got these number of steps. And then the next part is you figure out, are there any of these steps we can automate?
Yes.
And maybe we're doing it manually at the moment, and maybe we could automate that to save time and make it more scalable. And then, who's doing which step? For example, if it's finding contact information, maybe that's the researcher who's doing that.
Hmm.
If it's uh, starting the automation, then maybe that's again the researcher. If it's,
Hmm.
following up and calling candidates, maybe that's the recruiter, and so on. And then everybody knows what their job is in the process. And it just, again, it more like a well-oiled machine than, you know, uh, spinning plates.
Absolutely. I think
Um,
that's incredibly important.
so you mentioned you use Bullhorn Automation.
Mhm.
Um, where does Bullhorn Automation and the Zoom Engage platform,
How does that work?
how do you, yeah.
Yeah. So, Bullhorn Automation, we weren't using Bullhorn Automation until recently. We were using a different platform that we were struggling with, and we recently switched. So I anticipate there will be some shift in how I use Engage right now.
Mhm.
Um, the problem with any automation that functions off your database is it's difficult to remove people once the process starts.
Yep.
Where Engage does a very good job
Mhm.
of when they reply, they automatically come out of that engagement.
Yes.
So that's why I typically use Engage for business development
Mhm.
because I don't want to bother a client if they've already replied.
Of course.
Where with the candidates, the recruiters are automatically going in and shifting their stage because they don't want to call the same person again, or they're trying to get them out of their list to pan down their hot list. So that change in the system allows that automation to work properly. So it seems that that's much more effective for a candidate outreach. It's also
Mhm.
really great bullhorn automation for like our newsletter, surveys to our clients. We do post placement surveys and things like that. So that's all great in automation because it documents and all of that. But from a basic drip campaign
Mhm.
of reaching out to clients, I find Engage to be a little bit cleaner for me.
Okay, makes sense. By the way, we should probably just explain a little more
Uh
what
huh.
we're talking about
Sure.
because it occurred to me some people may not be familiar with this
Yes.
concept at all. So, what you're talking about when you say a drip campaign, you mean it's an email sequence.
Mhm.
In this case, it's we're like for Engage, you're using it for business development. So, you would
Correct.
have a list of target uh, clients
Mhm.
and you would have a sequence of messages that are being sent to those clients
Right.
in order to, you know, ideally spark a
Yeah,
conversation, get them to reply so you can book a call with them.
sure.
And of course, then if they reply, they would be removed from the sequence,
Right.
right? And I think I mean, that's very, very effective. I think everybody, if you're not already doing something like this, you need to figure it out. It's
Yes.
something we spend, it's a big topic in our coaching community. We have, coaching sessions dedicated to it, and training videos and stuff. Question for you about Engage, because, so, by the way, in our program, we have like a member tool directory so that people
Okay.
share what is their tech stack, and people can
Sure.
see what each other is using, and then call someone and say, "Hey, Kim, I notice you're using Zoom Engage. How do you find it?" And
Right.
you're creating that peer learning, and sharing data. Um, the feedback I've heard is that Zoom Info is obviously excellent for the data side of it,
Hmm.
but that the Engage platform, the deliverability of the emails was poor compared to other platforms. So one guy in our program had tested Zoom Engage, the same message, and got much lower open rates than he had with another platform. I just wondered what the
Yeah,
experience with that
that
was.
that's very accurate. Um, I think part of it is it comes through it, you're not warming a separate domain. And what I mean by that,
Ah,
for
okay,
those
okay.
that aren't sure, is that the emails in Engage are going through your normal inbox. So they're in my sent items, they're from my email address. Where some of our
Okay.
other
Mhm.
marketing initiatives, we purchase other domains such as Scientific Search IO or
Right.
scientificsearch.co for the listeners that may not
Yes.
know what that means. And those are warmed and handled in a way that allow for a higher deliverability. So, knowing that, we do things in two different ways. So, one is our general marketing for the company that goes through those other domains that we get a higher deliverability. I use Engage. So, anybody in our database is going to get those company marketing materials.
Yep.
I use Engage as a reinforcement to that, to a hot list. So, I may take 10 clients a month and really work to get into those 10 clients. So if it was my only way to contact everyone that I'm reaching out to, it would not be efficient. You're absolutely right. But what I found is that with recognizing my name coming from multiple ways, I am getting some response to Engage. Um, is it the highest return on investment? It comes with my Zoom info, so it's part of the package, so it makes sense to utilize it. Um, but I'm noticing that it's part of a multi-prong approach to get clients, right? Some of them are going to get my
Yeah.
email, some aren't. Sometimes it's the way I write the email too, but the deliverability part, the person that mentioned that is absolutely correct. The deliverability is not as good through Engage.
We're getting really geeky now,
Yeah,
Kim.
right.
This is like hilarious. Email warming and all that stuff we
Yeah.
talk about in our group. So you mentioned writing of the emails, and this is
Yeah,
another area that recruiters can sometimes struggle with, and
absolutely.
it is a skill in its own. Just like telephone marketing is a skill, writing effectively in a way that makes
Yeah.
people want to respond to you is a skill as well. How have you developed that skill so that when you're reaching out to a candidate about a job or a client about your service or maybe an NPC, you're wording the email message in such a way that it's compelling and
Yeah.
people respond?
So they tease me here that I'm the wordsmith of the company. So to be honest, that part I know what you mean, and the majority of my staff struggle very heavily with that. It is not something that I had an issue with. I actually enjoyed the market shift from the traditional, hi, my name is Kim, I recruit, blah, 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 to getting creative and fun and innovative. But we do other types of training on that. I met a woman who that's kind of her thing that she does, henna prior, through Pinnacle.
I've heard of
And
her, yeah.
yeah, she was a recruiter and realized the gap in writing and just the impact of the way that you phrase things, and little tweaks here and there. So I have a group of us here that do her ongoing training program, and then we help others within the organization with that. Part of our process is, regardless of how long you've been here, when you start a search, you email the account manager your phone pitch, your voicemail, and your email with 3 subject lines. And then we work together on what that should look like. And it helps them understand what's the selling points of the company. It also helps them to learn what I tweak, and then we go over anything I tweak so that then they can learn from that for the next time. And we also share subject lines that perform. So it's one of the things you get from Henna is 100 subject lines. So that's been a lot of fun. So we've been A/B testing things and seeing what works. And some of the bullpens will scream out a couple different ones they're trying for the week or put it up on their whiteboard. So we've made it fun to test new things and get out of your comfort zone. And really, I mean, we are in a marketing business and we need to understand marketing.
Kim, you are my kind of woman. This is because it's so funny to hear you say that, because I think this is a real mind shift for recruiters and recruitment business owners, is to realize, yes, you're great at recruiting, but that is not the skill set that's going to drive results at a business level. You need to realize that the most successful recruitment business owners, recruiters, are the ones who are the best at marketing rather
Yes.
than recruiting per se.
Mhm.
And so rather than shy away from that, you just need to embrace it
Yeah.
and look at it as a challenge. I love the fact that you have training specifically for writing. You've got training for like every aspect of your business.
Yeah.
You're developing those processes and you have training to support it. I also love the fact that your recruiters, before they reach out to a candidate, they need
Mhm.
to um, internally,
Yeah.
validate their pitch, their
Yes.
email, their voicemail, and so on. Why would you not do that? Like, it's
I
crazy to me.
agree.
Recruiters just get on the phone and they wing it.
Yes.
Why would you wing it when why not rehearse it, practice it, refine it,
Right.
sharpen it, make it even better? If it can improve your conversion and the interest you get from candidates, that's going to result in X number of more placements per year. It
Absolutely.
just, it makes sense.
As hard as it is to get a
Yeah. Yeah.
candidate these days, the last
Um,
thing you wanna do is botch it when you get them on the phone, right? So,
right. Absolutely. What, is there anything else that you feel has been a success factor or contributed to you being a top performer, Kim, that others could model?
I I think one of the things that, comes up a lot when people talk to me, about, like, "How are you doing this?" or "How can you get all of this done in one day?" or, those types of things. I think that people don't spend enough time looking at their day or planning or time blocking or the organizational aspect. As salespeople, we'll make calls, we'll do our thing, but then we start a search and we might get lost in that search for an hour or two or something else. We follow the shiny ball kind of mentality, and whatever is exciting us, because that's what drives us, we gravitate toward. I think planning and being able to get through a day and being productive for the solid 8 hours, 10 hours, whatever your day looks like, if people truly look at what they accomplish in a day, I guarantee you they can fit more in if they really look at what those activities are. And, I have recruiters that I know that happens to, so I have them set a timer on their phone for 1 hour of sourcing. And then when that alarm goes off, you are on the phone and making those calls, and making sure you're getting to people. Sourcing 200 of the best candidates doesn't fill a job. Talking to candidates and getting them over fills the job. So I think a lot of people can pull themselves away from the money activity because there's other things that are more comfortable or more engaging for them as an individual. And establishing those habits of being highly active during my workday is, I think, one of the things that allows me to continuously be successful in this industry.
Absolutely. Good answer. And I like the
Thanks.
timer idea. I think that's called
Yeah.
the Pomodoro technique.
Yes.
That's what I've
Yes.
heard.
Yes.
Pomodoro is like, and setting a timer helps you to stay focused and concentrate because you
Mhm.
see the minutes ticking down, and it's almost like you've got that deadline to really
Right.
concentrate. You can't get distracted, and it helps you to stay. Because I think the biggest thing that drains people's productivity is they start one thing and then they go, oh, and they get distracted and go on to something else. And then they go into
Right.
something else. And before you know it, there's 5 or 6 things that they've started, but not actually closed any of those open loops. Um, is there a particular time of the day that you think about your day and do your planning, or how does that?
Yeah, I like to come in before everyone in the morning
Mhm.
and have a little quiet time so that I can look over everything, go through anything that's still pending from the night before. I do a kind of an internal debrief each day, but in all actuality, by the end of the day, I don't trust that I remembered everything till the next day. So I go back through everything in the morning and I do plan out my day. I also am very big on doing that multiple times a day. So I do that first thing in the morning, say 7, 7:30, and then at lunchtime, I'm going through what I should have had accomplished by then, following up, if I have 4 interview requests in my inbox from the day before and the recruiters haven't gotten back to me, well, where are we with this? Get back on the phone with them. Have we confirmed this? Did we prep this? All of those types of things. And then I do that again before I leave so that there isn't somebody waiting on something that I could have wrapped up before the day's over.
So that's smart because we all know that you start out with a plan, but then you get into the day and
Hmm.
all kinds of stuff
Yeah,
happens that wasn't in your plan. So you're
100%.
recalibrating and
Yes.
refreshing your plan throughout the day. That's
Yes.
smart. Kim, this has been so much fun. I feel like we've only scratched the surface, so maybe we can do this again sometime. But
Absolutely. Anytime.
um,
It was my
fantastic.
pleasure.
Thank you so much for.
Thank you.
But oh, I need to ask you
Yeah.
because I was curious. So you've got 4 grandchildren.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Amazing. What ages are they?
I have a granddaughter that's 16. I have
Okay.
a grandson that's 9, and I have a
Okay.
grandson that's 5 and one that's 4.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
quite a range. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And then your furry kids. Do you want
Yes.
to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so for years I ran a nonprofit called Forever Free that helped families in economic hardship to keep their pets. So we raised funds to pay for surgeries, spay and neuter, vaccines, you name it, because I had volunteered in animal shelters and realized there were so many people that were good people and good pet owners that financially fell on hard times. So naturally, during that, I started to accumulate pets. So right now, I have 2 dogs and 2 cats, and that's usually my mix. So I have a very
Okay.
old little dog that comes to work with me every day, and then I have a 1.5-year-old shepherd mix and 2 kitty cats at home.
Wow, that sounds
Yeah,
mad.
yeah, it
We only
is
have 1 cat, and that's already
wreaking
like,
havoc.
yes, yeah.
Yeah,
He yesterday just caught a mouse, and my wife freaks out when that
I
happens.
bet.
I'm the designated disposer of the mouse
Yes,
corpse. But
yes.
anyway,
He's doing his
Kim,
job
this has been a
though.
lot of fun. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. This has been. It was so great spending time with you today.
Thank you, and look forward to catching up again some other time.
Yes, absolutely. Take care now.